to another episode of Ope. We are live. We are somewhat in color. I couldn't find a good spot in the room with lighting, so I am kind of dark over here. But we are Ope. This is Ohana Packers Edition podcast. I am Iowa Joe, joined by the Lemon, Jake Schyvinck. And for those that aren't in the know, I call him the Lemon because he is very sour over the 2026 draft. So, it's fitting. I would have said the orange because of the reddish hair, but oranges aren't typically sour. But, Jake, thanks for joining me tonight. Yeah. First off, preseason football. It is what it is, but at least we know football is back.
Yeah, it satisfies a little bit of the hunger at the very least, right? Like, you want to see something. At the very least, I think it's great to see, young guys getting reps. First, second, third year players, undrafted free agents, guys on the roster bubble. Like all of that is really good to see of like, okay, is there progression here? Is there, are guys finding it earlier than you think? There is all of that, which I think makes it be a compelling time. I know at late third, early fourth, we're getting to fourth quarter. It's pretty rough out there, but I do think you can glean quite a bit from this, at least from a note-taking perspective and just kind of hitting checklists along the way.
Right, and I say this every year that I tend to like preseason football because a lot of these guys are fighting for their NFL lives, and so they're going to go out and put 150, 200% effort into it. So that's when you see more of the spectacular things. I know it was against the Packers today, but my dude Caden Weegan, with his 40-yard catch and run and, some of the stuff that he was doing on special teams, that's the kind of things that you like to see in regular season, but you don't really get it as much. So because, they're more set on the roster, so they know they're going to be there, so they're not willing to take as much risk. But some of these younger guys, like you said, are just going out there and giving it their all and really trying to make a name for themselves. And we have seen that in the past, where guys have made their made their names in the preseason, got on the 53-man roster, and then pretty much were stars. I've said this before. I remember when. Because I am in Green Bay, if nobody knows that. I'm up here on vacation. I'm going to go do some of the training camps. I've done this for years. I was up here the year Sam Shields was an undrafted free agent. And I remember seeing, hey, this kid's doing all right. But then he got injured, and I was like, okay, well, that's pretty much the end of him. And then, look at what he did. He went on, and he was one of the key factors for the Super Bowl that year and was stalwart for the defense for a few years before, eventually head injuries did take their toll and all that stuff. But that's the fun of the preseason.
Yeah, it is. I remember very much so remember Victor Cruz against the Jets, just lighting them up left and right. And you go, okay, this guy might, have some juice here and he might get to play a little bit. And so there's even that, it's, yeah, guys who just they as you said, they pop out of nowhere and they're like, here we go. This is, I'm making this roster, and that's obviously, of course, why the UDFA classes are important as well, right? Once the draft concludes, hey, we got to get as many guys that we like on our roster, on this 90-man roster, and just see what happens when August rolls around.
Yeah, and just because they're UDFAs don't mean that they're bad.
Right.
It just means there's something there in their game that maybe it takes a little bit more to coach up or teach or whatever. And there were other guys ahead of them on other people's boards that, they call it a draft for a reason. It's a lottery, it's a crapshoot. How many guys? We're both big into the draft. How many guys do we see get taken in the first round and they're out of the league in 3 years? But then we see guys who are taken in the 5th, 6th, 7th, or even UDFAs, and they seem to be around forever. So it is what it is on that end of it. But we're got to open up my thing here because I keep forgetting that we're live and we have chats. Oh, they're bots anyway. But yeah, it's just and it's over there on Twitch. Sadly, I wish we would have a little bit more over on Twitch, but that seems to be where the bots are coming from. But anyway, Packers did lose again. I kind of had this back and forth with a person on Twitter that they said that they pretty much to the end that they don't want to hear anybody bitching about a preseason game. And I kind of said I understand not bitching about like the main stuff like play calls and stuff like that, but there are things that I think it's fair to call out. If a player's doing bad, it's fair to call them out. If a player's doing great, I think it's fair to call them out too. So for them to have lost, it's no big deal, but there are some good, there are some bad. This is kind of going to lead into what Mike and I normally do in the season with the fresh, stale, and moldy cheeses of everything. We're not going to break it down like that right now, but this is kind of a taste of it. Jake, what were some of the things that really kind of stood out to you that on the good side of things?
I think the pass rush, especially from the first and second units, right? I think you saw a lot of that get going, and I know, it may not look like it again. Just if you're in passing and you're like maybe just taking a peek at the game right at the beginning, you're like, oh, Mason Rudolph's playing. That doesn't. Pretty much everybody else was out there.
Yeah.
In terms of like, I know a couple of the receivers maybe not, but like, Fautanu's out there, Dylan Cook's out there, Frazier's out there, Darnell Washington, right? Bernard and Roman Wilson are kind of receiver 3 and 4 on the roster. Like, guys are out there for Pittsburgh. I know it's not Rodgers at QB, but to have guys like Van Ness, Bull Rush pushing Fautanu back in the lap of Rudolph, and Brenton Cox getting some nice wins, and Baron Sorrell getting wins, and the linebackers flying around. Like, that front seven, when they were out there for what limited time, and then kind of that second group of pass rushers, they made impacts. And I think that's what you really want to see with Parsons out until at least mid-October, right? You have to find something. There has to be something else besides, Wyatt on passing downs or, the occasional, schemed up pressure, right? You got to see something else so Gannon doesn't have to keep sending blitzes all the time and getting super exotic to the point of like, real risk taking in the regular season. So it's good to see some guys like that making an impact, and that's good. It's going to be massive, right? Especially if this is a unit where if the linebackers and this kind of the spine of this defense, especially from linebackers to safety, is going to control a lot. If they want to get into a position where they can go tee off, like you got to have a strong unit up front, and so them showing up against Pittsburgh's best up front was a big deal.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that the pass rush was doing a hell of a job, especially when Gannon was scheming up a lot of those rushes. And, obviously later in the game with the lower on the totem guys, the scheming up was a little bit few and far between. But when, it looked like a whole different defense out there than what we've been used to the last few years, just in those first few. And, I agree. I know people are going to say, well, it was Mason Rudolph. But, Mason Rudolph does have some starting time in the NFL. And what do you expect? It's Aaron Rodgers out there going to be the number one QB. I know Kevin Harlan and John Kuhn were kind of saying, well, maybe next week he'll have a few plays and whatever. But, they even said it. It's been 8 years since Rodgers has played any meaningful snaps in the preseason. So you're not going to have Rodgers in your first preseason game. But for what they had, like you said, the offensive line seemed to be like their number one offensive line. Their receivers seemed to be their number one receivers. Their, running backs were some of the top ones. And like I was joking with Mike, let Lou Nichols and all them guys cook, because that just means it's cheaper for the Packers to go get Caleb Johnson and bring him onto the team.
Sure, that ship might have sailed. There's a real good chance for that in Pittsburgh. So,
which is really weird because just last year he was a third round pick, and it would be weird for them to just cut bait with him on that quick beings of what type of player he is. But I honestly, and this isn't a draft thing, I honestly believe that he could be something in the Packers system because they do kind of play a little bit with Tim Lester was in Green Bay for the longest time, and then he became the Hawkeyes offensive coordinator. So there is a little bit of carryover to it that I think he could be a little bit more of a threat here in Wisconsin, in Green Bay. But anyway, pass rush, corners. Cisse had limited run. He looked pretty decent. Obviously this is his first real action, so it's hard to tell with it. But wide receivers, the first group of wide receivers looked really good. I know they were really pushing him up. Oh, well, they lost Dobbs and they lost this one, but, there's still this cohesive unit and all that stuff. Well, you got to give them a little time to gel. Yeah, a lot of guys were on the team last year, but, they are without Dobbs. They are without Wicks. It is what it is.
Receiver, to your point, like it's going to be different, right? You're running, you're almost like a hockey line, right? Last year of like in and out, in and out, in and out type of thing. And maybe, Watson a little bit more than most staying out there, once he kind of got back and ramped up. But like ultimately, guys have, two of their top three have been hurt a decent bit, right? They haven't always been carrying the load all season long. And Golden was 100% kind of like a new guy on a hockey team, basically in and out all last year. And so it's like, it might take, some reps here or there, or game and a half, once we get to the regular season, Minnesota and New York, of like, okay, now we see kind of, all right, this is how they want this rotation to work. It's gelling, as you said, a lot better. It's just, it is different. Guys are going to be out there more often. It's not going to be a lot of moving around, at least in and out of the lineup for that receiver trio. So it's going to be a little more taxing for sure on them.
Right, and the same thing can be kind of said with the offensive line. I know this has been a sticking point for all of us, all Packers content creators and Packer fans and all that is, how is this offensive line going to... That's why I was joking on your guys' show this past Tuesday that it sounded like deja vu all over again with the way you guys were talking, because me and Mike had just done an episode talking the same stuff. And... overall, I think they did a fair enough job with what we suspect is going to be pretty much the starting O-line. Depending on Zach, a ZBB, or he's really liking the Z-Bach. So, is he going to be ready for week one? Are they going to hold him out for a little bit? I know he was just activated off PUP, but, how's the knee holding up? Is this going to be one of those things? But... So if he's not on the field, you would have to think this is the number one offensive line that they had out there. It was Morgan at left tackle. It was Burton at left guard. It was Sean Ryan at center, Jacob Monk at right guard, and Belton at right tackle. For the most part, I thought they held up pretty good. Maybe the run blocking wasn't quite there, but then again, they weren't really running Josh Jacobs behind him. So, but what were your thoughts on this perceived number one offensive line?
Is it tricky to have Belton just keep flip-flopping in and out. That's not very fun. Thank goodness that Burton's just kind of you're getting one of the guard spots, buddy. Like that's, and again, sometimes flipping guard spots isn't always kind of a walk in the park either, but at least it's a little more defined. But Belton's probably, kind of sick of like, which am I doing? Not hearing much at all, Jordan Morgan wise, is always good.
Right.
I know that it's like kind of like, oh, why wouldn't you want to hear from him? But it's like, it's kind of the same thing as like playing corner. Like when you get burned, that's when they let you know.
Yeah.
And so not hearing anything from him tonight was good. Not hearing anything from Ryan, that's always nice. So yeah, it's really going to come down to, again, as you said, a lot the whole Packers sphere is kind of on like, what is this offensive line? You look at consensus rankings of offensive lines, they are in the bottom, 6-ish of most of these rankings coming into the season because there's a lot to prove. And yeah, if Burton is the key to kind of steady the ship a little bit more, that's huge. And yeah, if Z-Bach is back and rolling week one, that's massive. But yeah, it was pretty solid overall. I know Monk got a nice little pancake in there in a run play. I am a little worried if Monk is going to be one of the starters going into the season. That's that's it, especially when it's not center, just because he's a little smaller than the rest of the unit out there. So that's always a little concerning for me. But again, I think if the guard spots, if Belton eventually is going to take one of the guard spots, that eases that concern. So it's good to see if this is indeed what we're going to see on the left side of the offensive line. Banks question mark at the moment of what health looks like. It's good to hear that there wasn't a whole lot. Now I know Yaya Black got to Burton a couple times, and again, Burton's a rookie. We can't expect him to, a 5th round pick coming in just walking in strutting right from day one. So, but I do agree. Like it was good that there wasn't anything like, there wasn't a massive hole in the ship at all, right? Like maybe we had to toss a pail or two out of there, every once in a while, but like it wasn't like, oh, we are sinking. So, which is always a good sign.
And they kept Jordan pretty clean for the limited time he was in there. So, yeah, I mean, and they did have some decent gains with them out there. They did pull Ryan pretty early, so they did shuffle around quick, which was, again, kind of weird because instead of shuffling Belton inside, they kind of kicked Kennard inside and left Belton out at tackle. So, it's not a big deal in preseason, but then it kind of makes you wonder, is Zach ready to, play? So that's why they're giving Belton a little bit more time at right tackle to say, hey, I know you may not like it. I know you may be better as a guard, but we're down a big dog. You got to kind of step in there because that's kind of what we drafted you for, was to be a potential swing tackle, if not, a starting tackle. And so it'll be interesting to see what that's like in the next couple of preseason games. But, outside of that, I can't really think of anything that was really... Oh, one thing. The main thing. The only points that were scored during the game. Trey Smack looked like he's really starting to settle in.
That's good news.
And technically he was 4 for 4. And 2 of them were of the 55 plus variety. So you like to see, and there was no real issue with, okay, well, he was a little bit left, but it was eked in. It was a little bit right, but it eked in. They were solid right down the middle kicks. That was the kind of thing that we worried about when Carlson was a rookie on the team, when Narverson was a rookie. They were kicking them. They were making field goals at points, but there was a big question mark on that because they would go a little bit left and it just kind of eked on that bar, or they went a little bit right and it kind of just eked on that bar. Smack, for all the misses that he's had during camp and all that stuff, between family night and tonight, it looks like he's really starting to settle in. So maybe it is just the conditions are a little bit different. I know Harlan and Kuhn kept saying that, Heinz Field or whatever it's called now is notoriously bad for kickers, and for him to do that, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was nice to see kicks going through the upright in Pittsburgh. Having been there last year at the game and watching McManus miss in a couple spots there, that was alarming. And yes, I know it's warmer, right? Obviously,
right.
That's helping, no question. But that first one was crushed. I want to be, and even the second one was as well. Like those are. It's not like, oh, that's a shaky, ooh, is that, kind of cringing a little bit. Oh, is that going to make it or anything? Like there was definite confidence when he's stepping up there, which is a good sign. Because man, yeah, it was a tough pill to swallow at the end of the draft, trading up, getting rid of 2 picks to go get a kicker, which is just, the process is always questionable to me. But again, if it works, it works this time. And we don't have enough at this point other than to say it was exactly what he needed to do to go out there. That's it. I probably won't be sitting here saying like we've got the guy or anything like that.
Right.
Just way too much scar tissue from preseason week 1 of saying we've got the guy across the board at many different positions.
Right.
And thinking of players I like the draft. Of seeing that early, right? Like. You just never know, but it's as I kind of said at the time, it's like a checklist, right? Trey Smack, really good one to cross off the list to start off, August for him. That is a massive deal.
And I agree. It's too early to say, oh yeah, this is the guy, because I mean, one in recent mind is Corey Bojorquez. There for the longest time we were like, okay, now we're set for punter forever, and then we had a couple of nasty games, and he just didn't have it. So it's like, okay, well now we got to start over again. But the one thing that does, like I said, looks really good for him is he's starting to stack successes. Like I said, they were pretty down on him because within the first week of camp, he had missed like 5 kicks or whatever, and they were starting to kind of make excuses. Well, the wind was blowing this, and this was doing this, but now we've had family night where he only missed 1, and now we have the first preseason game where, like I said, technically speaking, he went 4 for 4.
Yeah.
But that, and they were deep ones. They weren't like gimme ones either. They were pretty deep. What was it? 58, 57, 37, and a 40-yarder.
I'm gonna double check, but
I know the 2 was 57 and 58.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure there was a 37-yarder, and I can't think of what the other one was.
I think it was in the 40s.
Yeah.
I'm gonna double check.
So, that's what Mike and I have always sounded like a broken record with is let's stack successes with stuff. And that seems to be what Trey Smack is doing right now, is stacking success. Let's get into the regular season. Let's see how he does in the regular season. Maybe we can start coming up with names like the Smack Dat Club or something like that, and we can really start pushing him. But the obvious thing is they had to get rid of McManus. He'd blown too many games for us. They couldn't rely on Haversick because, really Haversick wasn't the greatest. He just had a game or two where he looked like he could be decent. And, technically speaking, I think, and I know it doesn't count because it's preseason, but technically speaking, if we were in the regular season, Smack would have the longest Packers field goal. Because I think Haversick was 56 at Arizona.
I thought it was like 63.
No, he didn't have that.
Arizona?
No. The Packers' longest kick, I don't think it hit 60s. I think it was 56. But, yeah, Jake's got to double check me because, yeah.
Listen, I just want to make sure. No, 61.
Oh, was it 61?
61.
Okay. So I was a little bit wrong on that, but I was pretty maybe the previous one was 56 and his 61 got it. But anyway, good on Trey Smack. Some not so good things. Obviously, the big one, and I think it's going to be a big thing until further notice, is Keyshawn Nixon and his lack of ability to tackle. I think on the one that comes to mind mainly is Oladapo had the guy by the jersey, was trying to get him wrapped up. Nixon comes over, gets in the way, doesn't, provide any kind of help at all, and just kind of like knocks Oladapo out of the way. And, Mike and I have, and I know you guys have been kind of on him too, but we're a little bit meaner than you guys are on your show. So, this is a guy who claims to be CB1. This is a guy who claims to have the dog in him. This is the guy that wants a new contract, was quote unquote injured with a hamstring until for one day and saw that, hey, some of these guys are doing better than I am, and then came back and we're getting the same crap that we did last year. And, I know JJ likes to call it the business decision that he made in the end zone against Chicago in the wild card game. But really, that was just that was the tip of the iceberg with what it seems like with Nixon, and I think he gets too much credit for, and you've pointed this out before, too much credit with the pass breakups he had early on last year, because what else did the Packers have when he was getting those pass up breakups? He had Micah Parsons and that dominant front that was getting pressures on the quarterback to help him get those pass breakups. So. What are you thinking on that so far? I kind of, well, no, there's one other one that I'll get to for that. But what are you thinking with the Nixon? Are we, is there any hope at all, or are we just gonna have to live with him claiming to be CB1?
Yeah, I think kind of when this all started with Nixon and like why there was like some talk of like, okay, he can maybe handle this is because he was physical, right? He was playing nickel corner and he was filling, he was hitting hard, he was basically had that end man line of scrimmage force player stuff as a nickel corner, and it was like, okay, like he can do at least this, and if he's physical enough and quick enough to handle things as a slot defender, like, okay, can we try him out on the boundary? And so the physicality, as you mentioned, was always kind of his calling card. Like that was like, okay, this is why I'm going to be big time in this league, and just to see him just deteriorating as a tackler is just that stuff is we can't have that. Like we can't we can get by. Look, everybody's going to get burned, right? That's what happens. I know the second Bears game where they're trying to clamp down on a quick throw because they're blitzing, and just Caleb made a nice play because he went to the corner route. Like I get it. That stuff happens. I know we're designing to try to trap that quick throw. Like that's not the stuff I'm worried about. I'm worried about the just lack of effort in space when things are coming your way. That stuff is much more controllable than, oh, well, we let up this big play because schematically we were trying to make him to throw here, right? Like that stuff is, we can handle that. And I think Gannon's defense, right, when Micah comes back is going to be a lot of like sit back in quarters, match a lot of stuff. And I don't think Nixon's going to be necessarily out of place there. But the problem with that is you need to rally and tackle at the, to the football if you're going to sit in quarters a lot and in too high shells when Micah comes back. And if he's not going to be a part of that, that's a problem. Can't be, this defense through 2 weeks last year was like just gobbling up guys after the catch. They were not allowing squat when guys got the ball in their hands. And if they want to be that, that's part of it, buddy. Like, so I just watching that happen in real time where it's like, people touting now Jerry Bernard as this just incredible yards after catch artist, like he's peak Deebo Samuel or something, is making me lose my mind out here watching a guy bump a guy who was trying to wrap him up and arriving at contact like he was trying to deliver like a package for Amazon. Like I just don't we don't have to do this. We can recognize that Bernard had a nice game, but also he got away with it because Nixon decided I'm not tackling in this spot, or I'm just not helping out properly. So, man, I'm just, for as much as I, am concerned about Cisse's play, I know for a fact Cisse will defend the run. I know he will tackle. That part of his profile was never a question in my eyes, and he saved a touchdown tonight, right? And so, seeing that, it's very clear, like Cisse, just. And no disrespect to Cisse, just because of what the room looks like right now, he has to start. Like I don't know how they could say, no, you're sitting on the bench, we're going to trot Nixon and Valentine out there. I don't know how we can do that to this point. It just doesn't make any sense. Like at the very least, Cisse has to be playing some week one. This has to be some sort of rotation going on, like we were doing with the receivers. Because 70 snaps of Nixon week one against Minnesota is going to drive me up a wall. They have Juwan Jennings now. If he's healthy, he's going to crush you with the ball in his hands. That's been part of his game. That's why he was so coveted when they let him go. Like I'm having nightmares because Nixon isn't going to wrap guys up. Seeing Aaron Jones stuff him into a locker is not something I would like to see either, really. As much as I love Aaron Jones, I don't want to see that week one. And so I'm like having nightmares now about how this is going to look when, even with how kind of soft the schedule looks to start the season, it's still like talented playmakers with the ball in their hands. I'm like looking down the schedule at all these teams. I'm like, oh no, like if he's not going to tackle, this is going to be just a nightmare out there.
I kind of joked in our group chat that because they were showing on the game coverage that both Cisse and Nixon were out of their pads, and Cisse was just kind of stalking behind Nixon and talking to him. I said I would have been talking shit. I'd been sitting there saying, hey, I'm coming for you. I got your job. I can tackle. I can do this. I'm younger. I'm better.
It's just out there going, why are you not tackling a rookie, boss? Didn't want to do it? Just didn't feel like it tonight?
Because I think that's got to be something that's going to get Nixon going, is somebody to sit there and say, hey, what's going on? Yeah. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? You want to talk a big game. You want to have the big money. You've got to show us what is going on here with that. You can't just come in here and expect it. You've got to go out there. And some people could say, well, he did earn it. Well, win. Again, win.
It's
even
more
when
of a default earning.
Yeah.
Almost,
yeah.
Because the room is not good. Like that's kind of where we're at.
And see, Mafi comes in and says Nixon is more of a zone CB. I get that, but he's not even that good at zone. Brian, I don't know how many times I was pulling my hair out of my head when they'd put him in zone and he was still giving up like these friggin' easy passes.
Listen, it's all great that he can be more of a zone corner. That's awesome. But Mafi, what do you have to do in quarters? You have to rally and tackle.
Yep.
If he's not going to do that, I don't care. I'm out. We're done. We're not doing that.
Trust me, I'm a Hawkeyes fan.
There has to be something.
That's how the Hawkeyes defense survives. Is it's a rally and tackle type of situation. So,
and not to go back to the draft, but it bothers me a lot that some of these like later quarters they take. Why aren't they taking like I know they don't want to because they're smaller, but some of these guys that are smaller who will tackle and care, like can we do that? Like it seems like Cisse's at least going to do that at the very least, which is great. But I just want more guys like that. That Ravens game should have been the only thing they showed when they're going through the scouting process of like, look what we have to have. Yeah. Watching Derrick Henry stiff arm guys into oblivion. It's like, I know he's not in our division, but like at some point you're going to run into playmakers like that. And
yeah, that's the one
you have to want it as a tackler. Yeah. That's all it is, right? There's obviously, of course, technique involved there. Sure, there's better techniques to tackle, but like part of it is just wanting to do it. Like D'Angelo Pons is a small guy, and he missed so few tackles last year because he wants it. Like that part should be the easiest thing.
Yeah, I just got to go back to early on in the pre-draft stuff. We both are in the Jim Wickens group chats and for his draft professors and stuff like that. And when it came time for us to start talking corners, I went in there and say, hey guys, you know a lot more than I do right now. What are the corners that are the better tacklers in college football that are draft eligible? And the first name people were throwing to me was Brandon Cisse. Yeah. And and I think that's why they picked him, because he fits their mold of what athletically, build wise and stuff like that, but he's also a willing tackler.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that this team is missing. Carrington. Yes. I love Carrington to death. He can cover, can't tackle to save his life. Nixon, we've beat that dead horse to death on that one. God, I'm brain farting on the ones last year, but even some of the guys that were on the roster last year, they weren't really doing much.
Hobbs.
Hobbs. Hobbs took a step back once they started yelling at him for hitting too hard in practice, and then it seemed like after that he was just done.
That's upsetting. That's upsetting to be like, I'm physical, and then it's like, all right, well, I guess we're not doing that. And
yeah,
can't let that seep in. But like, yeah, obviously, yeah, Cisse athletic, good tackler. Also, the Goody DiCaprio bit of it all being 20 years old when they picked him.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Never forget that. But yes. No,
Yeah.
it is. And that's, at the very least, is good that they went that direction in terms of we have to have that at the very least when we're coming into play. And yeah, it's just, I know we've been on the Nixon thing for a while, but that's just, it really is. Like, what more do you need to see? Like,
when
it's
you're calling it
frustrating.
out in the first preseason game of the year, you know it's bad.
Yeah.
And that's why I said if it's not the rookie sitting there calling the big dog out, quote unquote big dog out, if it's not one of the coaches doing it, the fans can't do it anymore because with social media, you just hit the block button and you don't have to hear it. It kind of reminds me of the South Park episode where, Principal PC makes Butters filter out all of Cartman's friggin' social media so he doesn't have to hear all the bad stuff and only hears the good stuff. So, but anyway, like I said, we've kind of beat the Nixon thing to death, and we're not going to stay on here too long because, again, preseason, we're not going to deep dive in this shit. But the one that I do want to hit before, Packers are the Leo DiCaprio of the NFL. Once you reach a certain age, yeet.
Yeah, Kenny Clark, see ya. No more.
Which is weird because he was still within their age range.
Yeah.
Which it just so that was the living joke as it is he went through 3 contracts and still wasn't even 30 yet.
And even still, it's like that's enough.
But the one that I got to bring up because and we don't have to spend too much time on it is the Sky Moore thing. And I know I was getting a little bit of flack for it on Twitter and all that stuff, but do you really think it is going to be worth saving this guy for the roster, even after the performance he had today?
My only concern is, as I know, like it's such an easy position to hype up, right? When it comes to camp and preseason, of like, look at what Sturdivant's doing, and Savion's taking a step, even though that video they showed of him was burning Christian Welch, which again, I can't believe that was showed as a clip. But anyway, I do worry that their depth is not
questionable,
not great, and so if you can squint and be like, yeah, this guy's a returner, but maybe he's got some veteran starting experience to lean on in the biggest pinch that, if it ever gets to that point. Like, I understand that. Would I rather give other guys, young guys who haven't proven it quite yet, a chance? Probably, considering the room that they have, the top 3. The problem is injuries have popped up with these 3 already, and so that's it. It is tricky in my eyes. Of like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I do. I understand that it's kind of like, yeah, we've seen the Sky Moore thing. It's not working as a true receiver. Is he giving us that much as a returner that we couldn't get from a Nixon, from one of the running backs, right? From Savion potentially. Like, is he really giving up that much? Probably not. Bo Melton, another one. So, like, I understand it from that point, but also just thinking about, like, if this is a serious contender, how much are they going to want to be like, yes, in a pinch, I want, Nair out there, right? As one of the guys on this roster, or Sturdivant, right? Like that. From that perspective, I get why they're keeping Sky Moore around, but I understand both sides of this argument for sure.
This is what it feels like to me. It feels like the whole Brandon McManus situation again. He gives you that little bit of hope that, hey, this is better than what we've had before, so that he must be the greatest thing ever. And then
we're going to have low standards at special teams, right? We saw no penalties tonight. Steelers racking up all the penalties on special teams, and we're like, what multiverse wormhole did we drop into, right? Like,
right.
So I get the expectations thing for sure. I do.
Yeah. So
and the low bar.
Right, and that's the biggest thing I have is people are coming out and, oh, well, his job is safe because of, did you, and Jacob Westendorf, love him to death, friend of show, whatever. You know, he and me and
Whatever.
well, it's one of those things that people are going to look at it and say, well, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And that was kind of the back and forth that I was having with Jacob and another person on Twitter. I can't think of the name right now, but when I said I said was, you know, seeing him drop those passes that he dropped or miss those plays that he did, can you really? Everybody hates me. Didn't you know that, Mafi? Did you see that it had took me to pull teeth to get Jake on here? But we saw what he was struggling with at family night. We saw what he was struggling with tonight on the preseason game. This is does this really justify keeping a roster spot open for him? You know, outside of pulling a full Desmond Howard and you know, busting out 3 punt returns for a touchdown or, you know, something like that, does it really justify keeping him around? Because it doesn't look like he's giving us much to do when it comes to receiving. And then he went and had a decent punt return, and they both came back and like, well, that's why you save a roster spot for him. It's like, okay, he gained how many yards on that punt return? Or he fought how hard? I don't know. I missed the actual return, so I didn't see how quote unquote good it was, but that just gives me the McManus feeling all over again. Well, he made this game-winning kick, so you know he must be the second coming of the greatest kicker ever. And do we just survive on, well, you know, it's better than what we had before. You know, 30 is better than being 32 out of 32. You know, is it like that, or do you give a Will Shepherd a chance? Because honestly, and Mike and I kind of talked about this in our group chat. Will Shepherd looked like he was going to put on some moves and get a good return until Oladapo got like rammed right into him and knocked the shit out of him. So do you give a guy like Will Shepherd a shot because he's probably going to give you a little bit more because he's more sized right for an offense? I know Sky Moore's not like tiny, but he's more of your prototypical slot guy, you know, 5'10", 200-pound guy that, you know, it just is he going to give you enough for both ways? And then you continuously hear the talk up of the coaches are saying that that he's gonna be this utility guy and he's gonna be able to do this and he's gonna be able to do that. He didn't show it. He had 2 catches that actually gained any kind of yardage tonight. The other 2 were dropped and one of them was luckily not called a fumble. So it is what it is, and I hope people aren't putting on those green colored glasses, you know, cheese colored glasses, whatever you want to call it, and say, well, you know, 30th out of 32 is a lot better than 32 out of 32. Because that's what it's kind of feeling like with the Sky Moore thing. You know, Nixon, young undrafted free agent, has potential because he's done it before in college. Will Shepherd, again, you know, he's not as young. I think he was a little bit of an older prospect. I think he'll either be 25 this year or he just turned 25. You know, does he do it? Sturdivant, you know, do you give these other guys a shot, or do you just wait until final cut down days and say, all right, well, that guy I know can do it. Yeah. So we're going to grab him. Bye-bye, Sky Moore. We'll call you if we need to, you know, or is this Sky Moore thing more of the Mecole Hardman? We're going to bring him in. We're going to give him every chance to do it, but then it ends up not happening.
Yeah, I think that with Moore, if he did both as a returner, I think you'd be more justified in like
right.
Being like we need him. But as you said, like Nixon and Sturdivant and Savion are getting kick returns. Like are you? Yeah, I would rather opt for young guys and go chase a receiver or a DB or running back that, as you said, has maybe returning experience in both facets from college that someone's going to try to sneak on a practice squad, or just outright cuts and isn't worrying about bringing him back to the practice squad. Like I think they can go fishing for that. Like I think that's something you can find around cut down day when it's, when just gobs of guys are getting released. So yeah, if it's like specifically like a punt thing, which it seems to be, I would rather opt for young guys at receiver and see what you have, because I think we've seen enough of what Sky Moore does. Yes, he scored on Corn Dog in the Super Bowl. That's super cool. But like, if the Chiefs of all teams struggled to, get him going and let him convert on opportunities, like I just hard pressed to see. But I understand like Green Bay is trying to mesh this sort of roster that's growing into their prime and trying to sprinkle in veterans at like key spots. Like I understand that from that perspective of like, we're in the window, we don't want these rookies making rookie mistakes on the field. Like I understand what they're saying, but I would be totally fine with just taking the risk of like, we got to trot somebody out there to just fair catch punts. Okay, cool. And like, let's try to, find these young guys who have more potential and a runway for development. Whereas like Sky Moore he's tapped out, right? Like we know what he is at this point.
Well, yeah, like you said, if the Chiefs couldn't do it, if the 49ers couldn't do it, then, who's really going to get the most out of it?
Cooked.
Or, maybe listen to the resident Iowa guy and next time draft the guy that is going to be the special teams ace that is potentially going to give you what you want on offense.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. And everybody else knows that has listened to the show or has talked to me. I was on the Weegent train. And it wasn't even just homerism. It was legit. If you want to fix special teams, if you want the gadget guy, this is the guy to do it. And we saw that tonight. And I know, it's just preseason, but, that's the kind of stuff that Caden Weegent can give. And don't feel bad, Jake, because I know you were doing it for a little bit, but I was sitting there having a brain hemorrhage every time Kevin Harlan would say Caden Weegent's last name, because he kept saying Wedgent. And it's like, no, I've listened to it for 4 years. It's not Wedgent, it's Weegent.
And that's tough when all the draft people and everybody have it already figured out and like they know and like they've got it, but like we don't. Like the guys call the games of the preseason don't have it. That's tough. But yeah, that's the other thing of like school of thought of like what day 3 should look like for the draft. Like if you want to go get like true special teamers, you can. I would probably more subscribe to the Howie Roseman thought of like, let's swing for potential starters right on day 3. But again, if you have in a typical Goody draft, like we've seen the 22 and 23 classes where you have 13, 12 selections, absolutely. Like next year, they're obviously going to have more 4th round picks and they're going to be, sprinkling a lot across day 3. You can probably do this type of thing in that draft. And I know they probably felt a little bit more pinched in this one of like, we just have so few picks. Can we really go the special team route? Do we really want to do that when we're a little bit short on picks? That makes it a little tricky, but yeah, I think they should be searching, especially again, undrafted free agents. Like scour it, just be scouring the cuts, all of that stuff. If you're really, really looking for a guy who can do both in the return game, I think you can probably find that. Whereas, as we kind of mentioned, it seems like Sky Moore's just doing the punts, and so like that's to me like that's not enough. Like you gotta be if you're gonna be really, really good, you need to be doing both.
Or these guys have been going out and they've signed two players from the UFL. There's got to be guys at the UFL that, because they've been dealing with these rule changes since the inception of the UFL. This has been the UFL's kickoff rules and stuff like that. Go out and get a guy. But, I hate to cut, I told
the rookie last year, DK, punt and kick returner, was it all pro? Like you can 100% find it. You can. It's doable.
But I told Jake I was only going to keep this about 45 minutes. We're a little bit long on that, but I hate cutting it short. We do have a good number of viewers right now. Jake, is there anything else that you kind of want to mention when it comes to this preseason game, or do you think we've kind of touched on it all?
I mean, I think the the quarterback's always interesting to kind of think about what that looked like tonight. And I know it's tricky because when you get that second, third, fourth string of offensive linemen out there, it can turn into an absolute mess. And at this point in the season, defensive linemen are always going to be able to, again, when you're kind of like at this point, like Pittsburgh had the lead, they can get 4 down and just get upfield, right? They don't have to, they're not like, oh, we're worried about these little tiny details and stuff. They can kind of just tee off with a lead. That makes it really tricky. And so you got, McCord and Drones running for their life. Drones, that did not look great.
No.
And like he was looking to scramble, and the Steelers were ready for him to scramble.
Yeah.
And that can't happen. That looks like, diet version of what Malik Willis and guys like that are coming out of school. Like that did not look good. I can't imagine he's got a lot of work to do if he's going to find his way out of the practice squad, I think, to this point. Like McCord looked better. And again, I know Tyrod Taylor, not a great night from him.
Yeah.
That's tough. It's not great, but ultimately, again, Green Bay kind of had a lucky deal for a couple of years there. They found a way to get the most out of Malik Willis, which was really impressive. And kudos to Mannion and all those guys. It is. We don't play screwed, as right. One of the coaches said in Indy when they're like, do you prepare for Manning being down? It's like, no. Why would we practice screwed? He said something else, but like at that, like Love has to be healthy, right? This isn't like we somehow found this guy who can come in and win. It's tough to do. Right. And so, but again, the QBs, it didn't look great tonight. I will highlight one more guy. John Williams, I think, did some nice things when he was in there at left tackle, 7th round pick last year out of Cincinnati, I believe. And that's great news for a team where you've kind of talked about it, right? Zach Zebach is, how is the knee feeling, right, for a guy who has, let's be real here. I know Kawada was having a big stink about where Brandon Thorne ranked him on the Bleacher Report 1000. Listen, the functional strength, it shows up, man. Like Montez Sweat, who is like not the best rusher, and I know the Bears fans hate when that gets called out, but he's really not that great. And, he's able to run him over, and some of these bigger, stronger guys can kind of run him over. That knee holding up for plays like that when you are, a guy who is the sweet feet, pass protect, stay in front of guys. Like if that's not going to hold when guys are really putting it to you, with a bull rush, like it's good to see other options potentially, developing. If you have to get, desperate in that area where it's like, we need belt neck guard. So who can come out there and play? Like having another guy who can potentially play tackle in a pinch is a big deal. So seeing John Williams, who we didn't really get to see last year, come out and I think show some nice stuff. It'll be fun to kind of go back and re-review it and take a peek, but it looked good in the live viewing from him.
And that's a guy that Quano has really been, pumping for the last couple episodes because he, for a guy that didn't even see the field last year at all, to come in and really step up, that's great on him. Yeah, the QBs, I feel bad for your co-host, JJ, because Kyle McCord looked like the better of the 3 backups out there. And we all know that JJ has got the full-on hate of Kyle McCord.
He was having flashbacks. It was McCord versus Aller there for a little while. He was having flashbacks, I think. PTSD. I don't know if he saw all of the game, but he might still have some when he finishes watching it. So...
Yeah, but he had some good passes in there. He was able to get out and move on some things. Has anybody decided if it is pronounced Tyrod anymore, or did he go back to Tyrod?
I thought it was always Tyrod when he kind of corrected, and I don't know. At this point,
who knows?
If we're correcting multiple times, we just can't be doing that. That's not. You got to stick to it.
It's the whole Tunyon debate all over again.
Stick to it.
Which is surprising that he played well tonight for the Steelers. Maybe he's got a little bit of juice left in his legs. But anyway, the quarterbacks didn't look great, and I understand what everybody's talking about when it comes to the backups, but we do know what the history of Jordan Love is. He has missed a couple of games the last couple of years. We have been spoiled with the Malik Willis backup train and coming in and being able to step up. So, that could be our or at least my over expectations of what the Packers backup should be. I just don't want to go back to the old McCarthy way of doing things and bringing in some random UDFA and that's your backup. You know, the Graham Harrells, the Scott Tolzienes, the Taysom Hills,
Seneca Wallace,
Joe McCallans, and you know the list goes on and on. And so I just don't want to see that happening. I'm obviously not saying, hey, go out and draft a guy just to be your backup, a la Matt Flynn or whatever. But, you know, find you. Supposedly Anthony Richardson is still on the trade block.
If the Rams can do it in the first, you know.
Yeah, no kidding, right? But, you know, like I said, I was going to keep this short for us because it is just a preseason game. Any final thoughts or anything like that, Jake? If not, you know, go ahead and pitch where people can find you and what you're up to. And I think you guys kind of changed your nightly schedule, so.
Yeah, you know, final thought is it's just great to have football back, be talking about it, right? Camp only does so much that, you know, kind of getting through that early wave of like season-ending injuries is always rough. But it's good to see, you know, young guys and guys getting opportunity, as you said, getting out there to play, which is just always a fun time. You always get these fun stories coming out of it. So, yeah, it's great to be back. As far as my stuff, yeah, Packer Project derailed all of that with JJ. That's going to be, you know, moving to Tuesday nights over there on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and all of that. But YouTube's really the good spot to find that. And then my stuff, the Quick Slant on Substack. There's going to be a lot of pods, a lot of film stuff going up there. That's not always Packers, but you know, I'm going to be working to sprinkle more of that in there. And then obviously, yeah, I'm doing YouTube stuff as well with a lot of film room stuff there. So there's a lot of good links at Jake NFL Draft on Twitter. Is probably the easiest way to find all those links in one spot.
I tend to be a regular viewer over there just so I can cause mayhem and chaos and everything else. So if you want to catch me over there, then catch me over there too.
That's true.
I'm usually lurking in one of the chat rooms at some point. You can find us, Ohana Packers.
We always it's fun.
When I give Jake shit about them being a lot nicer than we are, it's because they tend to not try to cuss and all that stuff on there. So I got to kind of force it in there on them. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, all that stuff. We will be having another episode, our normal episode Monday, depending on when I can get Kawano out of detention to record and all that good stuff. But be sure to like and subscribe. You know, drop us some reviews. We're trying to get, you know, help us get a little bit bigger, help us grow. You know, the old adage, one person tells 10 friends and those 10 friends tell 10 friends. You know, it is, you can build a base. I am in Green Bay, so if you happen to see me walking around with my Iowa hat that's clear over there, you know, please don't hit me, but do come up and say hi or something. I promise I don't bite too hard, and unless you kind of ask for it, then I might. But I definitely am getting too old to fight, so if that's what you're wanting to do, I don't want to do that. But yes, please give us ratings. 5 stars would be great. Any kind of stars would be wonderful, just to let us know how we're doing and what you like about it and what we can change and all that good thing. Facebook, Ohana Packers Edition. We are trying to get enough over there so we can start doing these lives over there. We will be doing lives more often now that the season is coming on. We try to do a post-game live. Maybe I can get Brian Rago with the Cheese Talk podcast, get back on there with me. If not, I'll find somebody else to hop on there with me so Kawano doesn't have to do double duty. And I just said duty, so, you know, my childhood brain is kicking in. But like, subscribe, follow Jake, follow JJ, follow Mike, Kawano Mike, wherever you can find him, Twitter, Blue Sky, me, you can find me Iowa_Joe86 on Twitter, Iowa Joe on Blue Sky. I've been getting a lot more followers on Instagram, but I don't really post over there. Follow the channel's Instagram because I do post a lot of the episode drops on that. But now I'm just starting to ramble, so as Mike would say, go Pack Go and aloha.